currently reporting from an unusual location. I am in Hawaii, of all places. Now, you guys might not know this, but gambling in Hawaii, as far as I know, is illegal. So we're actually not going to be covering a poker session from this state. Instead, I'm just here on vacation with Megan. We've been talking about visiting Hawaii for a long time, so we finally made it out. We're in Maui, which is probably the most beautiful place I've ever been so far in my entire life. But anyway, today we're going to take you to a much less cinematic location. That's the Bellagio in Las Vegas. They have a private 100-100 no limit game that I've wanted to play for a while, and I finally got an invitation. So let's go over those hands, and as per usual, I'll check in with you guys right after for some final thoughts. All right, guys, here we go once again. Today we are at the Bellagio playing 100-100 with an additional $100 big blind ante. Let's get underway. In the first interesting one, there's an early position raise to $300. The button makes it $1,200, and then I look down at 7 deuce in the small blind. You guys can probably assume, because this hand is included, that the 7 deuce game is on. And you would be right. It's $300 a man if you're able to win a hand with 7 deuce and show it. So I figured, what better way to start off the day? I make it $3,600 from the small blind. Early position raiser folds, but the button is not going anywhere just yet. So just like that, we have over 7,000 in the middle with the worst starting hand in poker, but at least the flop comes out pretty good. I think it's ace jack 3 with 2 spades. This is a board that should hit me more frequently than the button, I think, so I decide to continue betting $2,000. He calls though, so we're gonna need some help or some sort of miracle. Turn card is exactly that. It's the 5 of spades. So now we have 3 to a straight, 3 to a flush, and of course I can still have hands like aces, jacks, ace jack, ace king, even some flushes once in a while, although not too often. For whatever reason though, I started to convince myself that this card was a little better for him than it was for me. So I decide to check with the plan of betting the river if he checks back. But then he jams 13,000 after I check it over to him, and now we have a position where we have to call with the deuce of spades in hopes of hitting a flush or a straight. And that's assuming that the deuce of spades would even be good if I were to make a flush. So definitely not in love with the way I played this turn. I think the hand is okay up to this point, but I should have bet myself. Instead, now I just have to fold and we lose a bunch of money. Not great. In the next one, I straddle for $200. Middle position opens to 500. The big blind calls, and I look down at 8-7 of spades. I think it's a good hand to squeeze with the big blind having called, so I make it $3,000 to go. It's also a nice hand to balance out the times I have big overpairs. Middle position calls, as does the big blind. So 3 of us still in this hand as we go to a board of jack, 10, 4, rainbow. There is a spade out there though, and of course I've got a straight draw. So when the big blind checks, I decide to continue betting. Would obviously be doing this with top pair, over pairs, and hands like king, queen, or maybe even ace, king. So I throw in a bet of $6,000, sizing up a little bit since this is kind of a wet board. Both players fold though, and they announced that they had pocket 6s and pocket 5s respectively, so nice to get it through with just 8 high. In the next one, there's an early position raise to 300. I make it 1,000 on the button with ace king, and he makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of jack, 9, deuce. 2 clubs out there. Not much of a connection for me, but when he checks, I bet 600, as I would with all my hands. Should probably bet a little bigger, actually, but I only had 6 black chips left, and I was feeling a little lazy about breaking one of the bigger chips. So I threw them all out there, $600. He makes a call, and we see the queen of clubs on the turn. It does bring in the flush, as well as a few straights. And my hand's just really not doing too well now, so without even having a club in my hand, I decide to check it back this time and see if we can get to showdown. River's the 9 of spades, and now my opponent bets almost double the size of the pot, $6,100. Pretty easy decision against such a big size. I let this one go. I could have a bunch of better hands to call with. And now he turns over 7 deuce for bottom pair. So he did have the winning hand, but the extra salt in the wound is that we have to pay this man his bounty for winning with that hand. Next, the stand-up game is on, so we're looking to win a hand here. I think there's only 2 or 3 players left who have yet to win a hand. Matt Berkey, if you guys know who that is, he raises to $700, and I look down at ace-10 offsuit. I decide to raise it up and come after him a little bit, see if we can get a fold, either pre-flop or later on. Make it $2,500 to go from middle position. It gets back around to him, and he makes the call. So we go to a flop of Jack 7-5 with 2 clubs. I do have the ace of clubs, so all things considered, it's not the worst flop ever. Couple of backdoor draws as well as the overcard. He checks, and I decide to bet around half pot, 2,600. And now this is where the hand gets a little bit strange as he puts in a tiny check raise to 6,100. Not really sure what's up with that, but I have the ace of clubs, and if a club comes off, there are a few options, so I decide to call against such a small size. Turn card doesn't help though, it's the 6 of diamonds, and now he jams for his remaining 20,000 or so, so I just let it go. And he flips over King Jack offsuit, earning himself the stand-up button. And now he is safe. Luckily, I ended up avoiding paying out this stand-up game by winning a small pot a few shuffles later, but nothing significant. A few rounds later, we play a $300 bomb pot. That means each player puts in $300. We get dealt 2 cards, and we go straight to the flop. I look down at Jack 6 of hearts, and we see a flop of 9-6-4 with 1 heart. Not much going on for me, especially since we're like 7 or 8 ways, so I check it, and everyone else ends up checking too. However, the turn is a beauty. It's the 6 of diamonds, giving me trips with a pretty good kicker, so I decide to bet when it gets to me. I throw in $1,000. It's pretty much impossible to play a balanced strategy in a multi-way bomb pot. My usual MO is to bluff with big draws and bet when I have a strong hand. I know, super advanced. So anyway, I throw in 1,000, and now Dylan Flashner, who you guys might know from Hustler Casino Live, he's in this game as well and decides to raise it to $3,500. He's a couple of players to my left, and this immediately raises some alarm bells in my head because he knows that I could have a 6 myself, and he's still deciding to raise. Plus, he's got a bunch of other players left to act behind him who also could have a 6. So I'm already kind of not loving it. Everyone else folds, and when it gets back around to me, I still think my hand is just way too strong to fold, but I'm treading cautiously as I make the call. River card, I'm hoping pairs the board or obviously brings a jack, but it's neither of those. It's the 5 of spades, and I don't like this card either. Now, even if he has a hand like 6-5 that raised the turn, he now improves to a full house. I check, and he confidently bets $7,500. Tough spot now. I know I have a really strong hand, but we are losing to any better 6, and because this is a bomb pot, there's nothing stopping him from having ace 6, king 6, queen 6, and obviously he could have 6-5. Now, if he does have a 6, we beat him, assuming he has like a 10 or an 8 kicker. But not only is that a little less likely, he would also have to play it this aggressively. I do think he might just call sometimes with a 6 on the turn. So what exactly does this bet mean? I don't really know. I think about this one for a while, and I'm kind of discounting bluffs as well, by the way, because that would include straight draws or flush draws, both of which I assume would not play this way. They either would have bet the flop themselves or just called on the turn once I bet. So I'm not sure what to make of this hand. In the end, I end up deciding to make a disciplined fold, which I don't do super often, and he flashes me the 6 of spades once I do this. So obviously that piques my curiosity, and I asked him if he had a full house or what his kicker was at least, and he tells me later on that it was an 8, and he says there's no way you folded a better hand than me, right? So yeah, that's extremely painful. Let's move right along. I straddle for 200 in this next one. Once again, we are up against Dylan. He makes it $600, and now Berkey re-raises on the button to $2,000. gets to me in the straddle, and I look down at a premium holding. It is Ace King, Old Faithful. We all know this hand can be dangerous, but it's still a super strong holding, so I decide to raise it up myself. I make it $6,000. I'm also bearing in mind that I think Berkey might be re-raising pretty wide on the button. So I'm happy to do this with Ace King, but now it gets back to Dylan, the original raiser, and he thinks for a long time before eventually jamming for around $19,000. Berkey now folds, and when it gets back around to me, look, I'm not folding Ace King pre-flop against Dylan. I make the call, and he flips over pocket tens. So just like that, we have $40,000 in the middle as we go to a flip. He wants to run it twice. I usually don't care. Happy to keep it friendly. And we get these two runouts. First one is not great. It comes jack high, and he ends up rivering a straight. Second one, though, despite it being all low cards, is three spades. So I've got two overs and a flush draw. Turn card is the jack of clubs, and then the river is the deuce of clubs. So yeah, that all amounted to nothing, and we end up losing this flip twice. Now we're stuck a decent amount of money. A few minutes later, this hand comes up where stand-up is on once more, and I need to win a hand again. Been a little bit card dead, but finally I look down at an absolute gem of a hand, 6-5 offsuit. I decide to raise it up to $500 in late position. I'm the first one to raise in this hand. Everyone else is folded, but it's still just a little bit too wide considering the button is left act behind me. And sure enough, the button does call, as does the straddler. So we go three ways to a flop, which kind of bails me out. It's 6-6 deuce. We flop trips, pretty disguised trips as well. I continue betting for 500. The button makes the call. The straddler is out of there. Turn card is the jack of diamonds, and I desperately want to build this pot. So instead of betting, I decide to get fancy and check it in hopes of obviously check raising. And luckily, the button does oblige by throwing in $1,000. I spring into action now with the raise to $3,000. I meant to make it $4,000. That was my bad, but I make it $3,000, and he makes the call, which is nice. I feel like he's likely got a draw of some sort, like maybe he's got 8-7 of diamonds or a hand like that, maybe even ace high. He makes the call, and we see the 8 of clubs on the river. This is where the hand gets a little strange because I make another questionable play, in my opinion, by betting really small, 1,200. My train of thought was if he has a flush draw, this might induce a raise, and if he's hero calling with an ace, I don't want to blow him off that. But he immediately makes the call, and I feel like an idiot, feeling like we could have got more value. Regardless, at least a 6 is good, and we win this pot. So it's a step in the right direction. I don't love how I played it. Next, I look down at pocket kings. Finally, a super strong hand. Button makes it $400. Small blind calls. I bump it up to $2,100. The button folds, but the small blind calls again. So we're going heads up to a flop of ace, ace, 5. It's never super fun when you have kings and an ace comes on the flop, but it's always better when it's at least two of them, right? He checks, I bet $1,200. I think a small bet is the easiest play here, and now he check raises to $3,400. Not something you expect too often from a guy who just calls twice pre-flop. I feel like this is very likely just a bluff, or maybe we're running into pocket fives. That's fine. I make the call. We do have the king of hearts, and of course, hitting a king could be extremely valuable. So I make the call, and we see the 9 of diamonds on the turn. Now the small blind slows down and checks it. And I think even though it's tempting to check back here, we can still get value from some worse holdings like 6-5 suited, random flush draws, all sorts of hands that might play a check raise on the flop and now want to evaluate the turn. So I bet small. Worth noting, I would also have some bluffs myself, meaning this bet I think makes sense. So I throw in $3,600, and now he thinks for a little bit before folding. So kind of a weird hand, but happy to take it down. In the next one, I look down at pocket nines. Early position makes it 300. I bump it up to 1,000 on his direct left, and only he makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop, which is great. Ace, 9, 8, flopping middle set on a draw heavy board, both flush draws and straight draws available. He checks, I bet $700, and he makes the call, which is nice. It looks like he connected at least one way or another. Turn card is the 10 of clubs, which I think is a great card. We can continue getting value, and I think this is going to help him pretty often. He checks, I bet $2,000 now. I kind of wish I'd gone bigger, and he makes the call. River card, not my favorite. It's the 6 of diamonds, putting a one-liner out there. If he has a 7, obviously he makes a straight. But when he checks again, I just don't see him having too many 7s after the way this one has played out. Instead, I think we're likely up against a single pair, maybe a hand like Jack 10 suited or queen 10 suited, stuff like that. He could have king 9 suited. So even though it's a little bit dicey, I decide to continue trying to get some value. He checks, and now I bet $6,000. Now he thinks for quite a long time, but sadly ends up folding. So perhaps this river card stopped us from getting a little bit more value. But regardless, we move on to this next one where early position opens to 300, and I look down once again at Jack 6 of hearts. This hand was a bit of a disaster earlier on. Let's see if we can find some redemption. I defend the big blind, and we go heads up to a flop of ace Jack 5 with 2 diamonds. We flop middle pair, not much going on aside from that. I check it over to him, and he checks it back. Turn card is the ace of spades, which I definitely like to see. I feel like a jack is often going to be the best hand here, so we can get some value / protection with a small bet. Could also balance that with some random bluffs, so I throw in $300. He makes a call, and now we see an interesting river card. It's another jack, giving me a full house. Obviously, if he has slow played an ace, we are in some trouble, but I think this is a nice card to overbet because all the draws missed. Any random bluff I could have had on the turn now is clearly just going to be an air ball. So we're representing either a full house or total dust with a bet, and that's usually an indication to bet big. So I bet 150% of the pot size, $2,100, trying to get a hero call from king high perhaps, or maybe a hand like kings or queens, for example. But then, after some thought, he jams all in for 9K. So yeah, so much for my fancy river bet. I let this one go. If he's bluffing, so be it, but we'll never know. And then we move to this hand, which actually happened as I was taking notes on that Jack 6 of hearts hand, so I didn't capture it on camera, but there's not much to say about it. We ended up getting all in pre-flop. I have ace king of diamonds. He's got ace king of spades. It's about $8,000 each, so a hair over $16,000 in the middle. We run it just once. The flop comes down 8-8 deuce, 1 spade, 1 diamond, still a fair fight. Turn card is a 7 of spades, and then the river is the deuce of spades. And that's how you lose all in pre-flop with ace king versus ace king. So a nice little chunk gone there as well. And we move to this one where there's a middle position open to 300. I make it 1,000 in late position with ace 5 of spades. It's a good re-raise hand, I think. Gets back around to the initial raiser, and she makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of queen jack 4 with 1 spade. Not much of a connection for me, but in general should be a good board since I re-raised pre-flop. So when she checks, I bet 700. Small bet here is completely fine. Plenty of turn cards that could help as well. We could turn a flush draw, a straight draw, top pair. She makes a call, and we see the 10 of clubs, which obviously doesn't directly help me, but I'm pretty much the only one that should have ace king in this situation. And she, at most, is going to have 2 pair, which even a hand like that is probably not going to love this spot. So when she checks, I go for the overbet once more. $5,000, trying to put her in a tough spot with any single pair holdings. And it seems to get the job done because she folds fairly quickly. Now, that was the last interesting hand for me. I remained pretty card dead for the rest of the session, and nothing really that great happened. So despite it not being the most eventful session, I hope you guys enjoyed the hands, and stay tuned for some final thoughts. All right, welcome back to Paradise. You know what was not paradise was the session you guys just watched. It wasn't my best. Let's just be brutally honest. I think I played pretty poorly. I also ran bad, which didn't help. And when you pair those things together, plus playing a pretty big game, that's how you lose a bunch of money. I was in for, I actually don't quite remember because this was last week, but what I do remember is I lost somewhere around $30,000. So yeah, a bit heartbreaking. But on the bright side, we had this trip to look forward to, which I am thoroughly enjoying. It's been about 10 days since I've played poker, and I think I'm not going to play for like another week. So I'm taking a nice little break, mentally resetting. Life is good despite losing at the Bellagio. I hope you guys enjoyed me checking in from here. I figured you'd like the shots. I definitely like them. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support, and I will see you all very soon. Peace.